Hello, kind viewers. Welcome to the weird and wonderful world of databases with your host, Lauren. What you're looking at here is an entity relationship diagram, or an ERD. It indicates the various tables and how they're associated in a given database. And sometimes they're organized based on these containers that are called schemas. And that's what we see happening here. So there's lots of different tables. And here's a bunch that are in the sales schema, some from the person schema. And these linkages that are shown to connect them around are primary and foreign key associations. Like in one table, there'll be a number, a column that has this goofy number that it has dreamed up, and then something that usually wouldn't expose to a person referencing the tool or whatever. This would just be an internal number, so we call it metadata. So a number that then associates over to another thing. So like for instance here we have salesperson, and a salesperson might be responsible for different sales. And here's kind of the list, like the main deal about the various sales that that person would have done. They're related across a primary key on this part that's called the business entity ID. It's just a goofy name that has been chosen on this sample database, and this is kind of in keeping. If you go into a corporate environment, you might find some of these screwy names like this that are like really general. And that's supposed to mean like some sort of a concept or whatever. In this case, then it relates to a person, and it could relate to other stuff then as well. At any rate, then, so that salesperson has been responsible over for these sales. And then over here on the foreign key side would be also this business entity ID. It would be a little bit daunting for a newcomer to try to then navigate this kind of thing. So I've written a gem and put it into the Ruby gems environment so you can just easily install it in a new Rails project so you can visualize it a lot more easily. You can navigate and see all the data involved. Let's in fact look at the salesperson table. I've got it loaded up here. This is just fresh out of the box. Installed the Rails environment, the gem, and then point it at this database, and this is what you get. If you go to the name of the schema / the name of the table in a URL, then this is what comes up. And you'll find, oh, okay, it relates to a sales order header, and it says it has many of them. That's what HM is supposed to stand for here. That's a Rails idea. And you can see all the different salespeople and then the various sales that they have been responsible for. Like this person, okay, 95 different sales. We click into there, and then this salesperson with a screwy number, it just happens to be the gem randomly picked. I guess I'll show you the first column of whatever salesperson is, and it found their quota. So that's why it's like 250,000 or whatever there, and not actually somebody's name or whatever. But we can make it, you can give hints to the gem so that it would know, oh, I'm supposed to show a salesperson name instead of like some, whatever the first column is, and just chance upon something that's not useful. But at any rate, then we can kind of see a lot of the data and how it associates. The has many belongs to ideas are what associate like foreign keys in the Rails world. So in the database world, it's primary key, foreign key. And over here in Rails land, a foreign key is something that belongs to something else. Or what we had just navigated was a has many. And you'll find those has many's always, the brick gem just puts them by default at the right. They can be resequenced through different tools and stuff. But anyway, this is just a default layout or whatever. Like you can carve this up quite a lot, make it searchable, sortable, and then pagination and all that kind of stuff. That can be available and put onto these tables. So it's like a design environment. You start with something like simple, and you can navigate around. That's the idea of brick. And then you can add security. It's a paid option, a little extra, and then add charting, another paid option, and then auditing and other stuff to be able to make it a really fully featured app. Like you could honestly then drum up a well-performing business application just by using this brick gem. But to get started, it's free. This is the free version, just taking a look at how it works. These arrows to the left are supposed to do, like, show me one of these rows, like a whole, this is a sales order header, so a given sale. So click on that. And whereas we'd been seeing like some stuff with green there, now what comes up is all the stuff in blue. So that coloration is to indicate the green stuff is lists of many rows, just to have that to be consistent. And then when there's stuff that's blue, that's information about one row. So all this is like just information regarding one given row. And some of this stuff, we saw that there was linkage over there before, right? And these are belongs tos by which you can go and be able to see, well, how does it associate maybe to a ship to address? This given order, Delridge Way Southwest, what is that? Then this is an address. And so somebody had ordered up this thing apparently. Here's an example of that sales order head, and we find that like it's picked again on some, although these are 4 separate items, then they all look like the same, but really it's 4 separate items because the tool had just simply chanced upon the very first column, revision number 8. That's not useful really to say a sales order is associated with a revision number. Probably we should say that it's like based on a purchase order number or something better, you know, maybe even throw in a date or something else to be able to have some more information about it. At any rate, if you have a complex database and it's a little daunting, you would like for it to be a simpler opportunity, well, I would invite you to consider put that into Postgres and then put that into the brick gem and take a look at how it looks. And here's a little bit more about how to kind of get started with a simpler database with the brick gem. In fact, how about we'll get started right from scratch, right from Rails new, and then a given name of a project. So how about the brick demo? I have Rails 7 installed on this machine. We'll want to use with this new application that we're building out the PostgreSQL driver, which means just Postgres, put the gem on there and allow it to work. So it whirs and clicks for a minute here and puts together a new Rails application. And it'll be underneath, I'm kind of in my home directory right here, so now I can change into that location and let's just do a little directory of it, take a look at what's there. We have gems specified in the Rails environment inside of this gem file thing, and we'll be modifying that to be able to add the brick gem in a minute. And then also to be able to point this fresh application at a specific database, if you've already got a Postgres database sitting around, you know, then you would go over to the config folder, and inside of there is a thing called database YAML that'll allow you to modify where this application points to. We'll be doing both those things. So now knowing this given folder, let's go in over to an editing tool. I've got Visual Studio Code. We can open up a folder. How about inside of this guy? And that should work. Yeah. Of the various files inside, we mentioned, oh, here's the gem file. We'll be using that. And as well, then there's the database YAML found under config. So there's that guy. That's what that looks like. Let's first add the brick gem into the gem file. And we'll do gem brick. Simple as that. Just add that line in there anywhere. I happen to put it just next to the Postgres gem, but it could go pretty much anywhere. There's a lot of gems used by Rails. Even Rails itself is part of the list. And just anywhere in the list, we'll save that out. And after having done so, we can use the bundler tool to install whatever sort of updated gems. As you go through the installation of Rails, you'll find that the bundler tool is a part of the whole set there. And the default action on bundle is to install, so we'll go ahead and just let it do its thing. And it'll find the brick gem and install it. There it is. Apparently it was already on my system previously because I've been messing around. You might see yours in green and it'll show up, oh, guess what, I got brick for you. And you'd say, cool, all right, you got brick. Now we'll go into the database YAML file, and this is organized with development and test and production as being 3 separate environments. We'll just be messing with our development environment. Each one can have a different database. For ours, instead of having the brick demo thing, we'll point it instead to, how about Northwind, which is a very small database that I like to goof around with just for like, it's good for beginners. Just kind of take a look around, very simple sort of a database. And now having done that, we've bundled, we've got that database change put into place so it points over to Northwind. Let me just do a Rails S. I do bin / before that, so it looks at the binary folder. There's no mistake in it. In case I have multiple Rails versions installed, it's like, I want the one from this, please. which is going to be the Rails 7 one that I have here. So that had gone through quickly and took a look inside of the Postgres database that we have and said, I'm finding these 6 little tables for you. Here's various classes that can be built automatically from those given tables. Well, let's try one out. Maybe category. So going back over to our browser, now we can go to just categories. And here it's come up. And taking a look back into the terminal window as it had worked, it built a couple files for us automatically. First, a very simple model. It extends from what all models in Rails extend from, active record base, and it indicates that it has many products. It had noticed that foreign key that was already on that table, and it said, I'll build this for you. I'll have it that you can relate over to products. After having built that model, it then built a controller. So it's trying to adhere, the BrickGen tries to adhere to the Rails environment very closely. If you wanted to have your own model or controller, you could write it on your own and then not have Brick do it at all. If Brick sees that that's already there, it'll just defer and allow you to write your own thing. But by default, then, you see the stuff that Brick is cranking out. And it's not saving these files. These are just in RAM. They come up extremely quickly, and then they're available. Like if it ever gets unloaded from RAM, then it can just come right back in if it's needed. If Brick sees that there's an absence, if the Rails environment is trying to pick up a model or a controller, then it says, oh, you're not finding it. I have one here for you if you like, and then it just puts it into place. Here we have the product model as well, that it saw, hey, I guess I'd like to relate to be able to find out a count of how many products are a part of each of these categories. If we see the resulting query, we find it's shown us a lot of stuff about categories, these various columns, and then also a count of the products. That's a column to indicate how many of the products we've got. And the way that it joins these things together, it's taking it from categories and then joining in a derived table. So this is an internal sort of a subquery kind of thing from products to be able to count up how many relate over to my categories. It's joining it on the appropriate category ID and then finding an appropriate count for us then. At the end of the day then, what do we get? This sort of a cool listing to be able to indicate how many products for each of the categories. So it's pretty quick but useful little query to be able to understand kind of the distribution of your data. And you can now go in and find, yeah, sure enough, there's 5 of these that are the produce. And then go into when people have ordered these things up and see more detail about how it's all organized. Individual orders and a little for the customers, the employees. You can just click through and see listings, all this kind of stuff. As we've now clicked through for a few of these, every time it's building out a few new models when it hasn't seen them yet, like there was for order. The has manys and belongs tos are appropriately spelled out. And then also controllers, like we had seen the list of orders and it put together this orders controller just like Rails would, and it put it into RAM for us. It has an ability to do updates. I don't have yet put in the new thing, but probably by the time you download it, who knows, then it might be in play. The BrickGen's getting pretty well fleshed out quickly here. It's in a state in which it works with, as you've seen, like it works with schemas and multi-tenancy and all sorts of stuff. Like it knows about if you have the apartment gem, it'll say, oh, you're probably doing multi-tenancy. It's familiar with another thing called Duty Free that does import and export and creates graphs and stuff. There's a paid version you can do that does the imports really fancy and then does some cool graphing tricks like with cross-tab queries and stuff. Pretty cool. We see that for some of these, it had required a little bit more involved query, and this just keeps building out a bunch of left outer joins as appropriate to be able to get the right counts on board, or to be able to get information about associated names of things or what have you. Like over here in orders, we found that there was like a customer name and an employee name. It had joined out to employee just to be able to get the first name of that given employee out there. And we see that in the query that was constructed. left out or joined the employees. And that was just so that we could also get that employee first name, as you see here, so that this column would come to bear that employee first name. And that's kind of as simple as it is to be able to first install the brick and get it to work. Maybe one last experiment that I'll have to show you just one final other database. Like, we can switch gears so easily on this. From here in where we had set up the Northwind, just point to Northwind, we'll set up instead to point to DVD rental. It's another database that I pulled down. This is a sample database from the MySQL environment, in fact, called Tequila, and it's got a little bit larger data set. I'm just popping this on board and stopping and restarting the server so that it can get its senses here. It needs that in order to read that environment again. It's seen now that we have all of these different tables, so different database entirely that we're pointing to now. We go to these films and things, and let's take a look and see what we get. In fact, kind of showcase some of the compatibility with the composite keys gem here in a moment. We'll see. But to start off with, then, here it is, films. And a list of all these various different films. Click on inventories. Interesting, we've got this store ID, but it doesn't seem like it's really connecting appropriately because it doesn't have a link. That's an actual foreign key, so let's just take a note of that. In the inventory table on this DVD rental database, it just doesn't look like it really has a connection there. And go around to other tables, and they seem like they do have connections, like over in the rentals and stuff. They have belongs tos that are hooked up appropriately, payments that are associated. You see if they have these links at the top, it knows what it was, and it made it into a primary foreign key sort of a thing. It has many belongs to. It made that association. But for whatever reason, just this database is lacking that thing, and that might be frequent, actually, that you have. So we'll fix that, and we'll also fix, how about we go over to film actor. Let's take a look at that table. And it comes up just fine. There's an actor, there's a film. And if we take a look over in the terminal, scrolling down to all the stuff that's been going on, this actor, the film actor. Maybe I've really clicked it a lot ago. Let's see if I can find out where I first clicked on that guy, Oh, here it is. Yeah, it said here's our, like, a film category, a film actor. So I clicked on it a little bit ago, apparently. As a part of the inventory, it started to spell those out because it looked it up from there. It had a key that said, hey, why don't you go over to actors as well? And here it's indicating a little nastygram for us. Active record does not support composite primary keys. Well, actually, there's a gem that does allow it to, and I thought the brick's going to be really useful, if people can use composite primary keys, because people do it all the time. It's a very, very common practice with many databases out there. Even though Rails, it's kind of frowned upon in the Rails environment, still you might find a whole ton of databases out there, and who would want the brick not to support that, right? So I made it so that, getting back to our gem file, if you just happen to put in composite primary keys, let's go ahead and restart. I have to bundle, of course, as well, because we've got a new gem. So we've changed our gem file, bundle to be able to understand that thing. It puts in the composite primary key gem. There it was. Now, if we rerun that server, try to call up film actors. I'll just refresh that guy. Went to town quickly. No more complaints. We look at film actor. It has a primary key that's of two parts, actor ID and film ID, so it understands what's going on. So the brick gem works hand in hand with composite primary key just to make it all work. And this works in conjunction with all those crazy schemas and anything else you want to do, really. AdventureWorks database actually has a few of these composite keys as well, so you can play around with that and kind of prove it out or whatever. As you look down to the bottom of the screen at the links being created, if I were to click into one of these rows, we find that it has kind of a goofy sort of a what? Is it 1% 2F 277? What that means really is the %2F is a special character. It's a hexadecimal value there that indicates it's a slash character. So it's as if it was like this two-part key, there's one of them that's ID 1 and one of them that's ID 277. So clicking in, there's Penelope, which is ID 1, actor number 1. And then there's what, Elephant Trojan, whatever that means. That is, 277. So sure enough, that composite primary key had functioned properly to be able to call up through that belongs to relationship this exact row to understand this film actor. So film actor is kind of an associative thing. You see also here, by the way, there's a lot of these last update columns been sprinkled around through this. In fact, I think every table might have it. When we have those kind of common columns that, like every table has, it may be something like row GUID or like Rails always does, created at, updated at, these kinds of metadata like internal type columns or whatever. If you say that all of those are kind of metadata, then the brick gem will start to establish even has many through relationships for you. Maybe we should do that for a minute. So getting back over to our brick environment, there's one more file that we'll create and put into initializers. We haven't done so yet. These initializers are how to kind of start up the environment, and Brick has its own custom initializer that you can build. If I get out of this Rails S environment for a moment, I can do Rails generate a brick install. And many different gems like Devise and others, they do an install sort of a thing. And so this has now gone through, analyzed our existing database that we're pointed to, happens to be that DVD rental database, and then has put together a brick file with suggestions in it for us. So it understood kind of the nature of our database, and then it's got some suggestions, in fact. Here's the new file that was found under initializers there. It wasn't there before. And these are all the various different settings, so many. We're going to add new foreign keys. I think you might recall that there was one that was goofed, wasn't it, that was missing. Oh, in fact, here it is. We had chanced upon finding that from the inventory, I think, that the store ID was missing, and that was kind of trouble. So if we just simply, this is the suggestions that it has. It recognized all those. We can just uncomment it, and this is stuff specifically for our database, for the DVD rental database. It just understood, and it built this file custom to indicate here's how you could make extra associations. Sure enough, I'll have all those, I think. You might not be so footloose and fancy free on yours. You might want to be very careful on it, but who knows. Anyway, you can experiment and see. It's not going to break anything, certainly, to add them and try it out, As well, what else had we wanted to do there? This last update, if you recall, is kind of metadata. And in the list, there's stuff like that would relate to metadata columns. Here it is. So let's enable this guy, and I've just built it actually so that the sample, in fact, it's for the DVD rental database. If you, no matter what database you're upon, if you were to build that out, it doesn't like auto recognize that one. But anyway, it just the sample itself is built for that. Save that out, and then we'll have to restart the server because we've made changes to an initializer. It'll reread that stuff, figure its life out. As we refresh that, notice that that last update just went away. So it's going to try to hide all these metadata things. Whatever you indicate as a metadata column, it'll just hide it away from view. No matter which table it appears upon, it'll just try to then keep it at bay. If we go back over then to one of these actors, Penelope, now instead of being these film actors, if you recall, an actor related to a film actor, and that was a little bit annoying. Well, now she just directly relates to films. This is through a has many through association. If we were to take a list at all of the actors, we see that now there's this new HMT, meaning that it has many through something else. So it has many films through, it doesn't tell us, but it's really film actor. We just saw it a moment ago. And we can still go to that film actor table and see that if we want. But now, this is like an associative table with those two foreign keys involved. It says from the one side of films, then we can relate to many actors. And then from the actor also, we can relate to many films. So this associative table establishes then a many-to-many type association between. If we click on these links on the top, it's going to show us like all of these things. So then clicking on films, there's a list of all the films, and also then we have these new has many throughs that have become available by virtue of having set that up. Over to remove the metadata column, then yeah, we have all sorts. Films have categories. Drama has 62 different films apparently. Here's all the drama films. It filters it by having this sort of an indicator in the query string that comes in to say, please then filter it, and then it indicates, so these are drama films. We can even look then, which actors of the drama films then, which are the ones for this specific film, and so it's the Beethoven Exorcist film, whatever. Hope that you like what you see. This is a very, very simple gem to use. You saw that it just took moments. New Rails project. Start it up and then just goof around with, first of all, putting the brick gem on board in the gem file. If your database needs composite keys, you might want to choose that as well. So those couple gems. And then set up as well your database. Point over to a given database of your choice. And then finally, you may or may not want to install the brick RB, but I really recommend it. There's like a lot of options here. You might want to read through this thing. There's like a lot of stuff, and it's growing. We had done that, if you recall, by just doing this, the Rails gbrick install, and then you go edit that file. It doesn't do anything by default. It's just all commented. You uncomment stuff to your choosing to be able to enable the various features. And you can do stuff, pretty wild stuff like single table inheritance, polymorphic associations. There's all kinds of stuff that's available. So multi-tenancy. It's a fairly well fleshed out gem. I mean, for being a version 1.0 of this product. Hope you like what you see, and that's Brick. Go install it and have some fun.